Juan Soto will get $765 million over 15 years, but no deferrals. That's right. You heard it. Not $1. As a matter of fact, Juan Soto will get $75 million, about 10% of the contract right now upon signing. The word actually in the contract is upon confirmation because MLB has to confirm the contract. The union has to confirm the contract. He has to pass a physical. And believe you me, he'll have MRIs on everything from his head down to his toes. $75 million. And then the balance over the next 15 years. Another point. There is an opt-out that Juan Soto has. That's right. The dreaded opt-out. When we gave Giancarlo Stanton not too many years ago, like a decade ago, what was then a record $325 million. Side note, I told you, Giancarlo, you wouldn't have to worry long that your contract is the biggest contract. And boy, he didn't. We gave Giancarlo an opt-out after a bunch of years, after 6 or 7 years was his opt-out. And it's not every year. You get one chance. The New York Mets have given Juan Soto the chance after 5 years to opt out of his contract when he'll only be 31 years old. And if he doesn't want to opt out, he's still going to say he does, because guess what the Mets have to do if Juan Soto opts out in 5 years? Instead of $51 million a year for the remainder of the deal, which would be 10 more years, he gets $55 million per year for the remainder of the deal. So the AAV of the remaining years would go up from 51 to 55 million just to stop Soto from opting out. Spoiler alert, 5 years from now, barring catastrophic injury or some sort of lack of performance, the likes of which we can't predict or contemplate, you can bet your bippy that Juan Soto will opt out after 5 years and use it as a complete sword right into the heart of Mets fans. How did this happen? Juan Soto's entire life was a precursor to this moment. Nobody wanted to see it. We did. When you choose Scott Boras as your agent, you are not choosing your love of Monument Park. You're not choosing the beauty of playing where David Ortiz played and hitting balls out off the Green Monster. The fantastic living that you can have in Toronto. Joining the behemoth of the Dodgers. When you choose Scott Boras as your agent, you are choosing one thing, money. You know what? Good. Never begrudged anyone for choosing Scott Boras. I begrudge people who don't understand what players are doing. They're not stupid. It is a purposeful choice. So let's go back just a few years. That's all, a few years. Ted Lerner, rest in peace, like my grandfather. $440 million, 12 years, record. More than I paid for the franchise, sonny boy. We'll put deferrals in there. What do you think? Juan Soto said, I'll bet on myself. And Ted Lerner and the Washington Nationals said, we're going to have to trade you. Juan Soto gets traded to the West Coast, far from where he wanted to be. Family in the Dominican, feeling as though the East Coast, if not Florida, made the most sense for him. He gets to San Diego, falls in love with Peter Seidler. Who doesn't? A man who has dreams, visions of being something that he and the team could never be. Except during his time with the Padres, rumors persisted. Trouble in the clubhouse. Was it Tatis? Turns out maybe not. Was it Soto jealous that everyone had the long-term deals, but he still was a free agent playing for his soup? Extension from the Padres? I think not. Here's the plan. The Padres didn't win with him. How about pinstripes? And then starts a 1-year courtship, a love affair with New York. People calling out his name in the roll call before starts, before each game. Juan Soto. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Garrett Cole, Monument Park, the World Series. Yankees thinking, we got him. We are going to have Juan Soto as our next Hall of Famer. We have not been willing to do for any player what we're willing to do for him. We didn't have to do it for Judge when there was a thought that Judge may go to San Francisco or Toronto. Turns out Aaron Judge had loyalty to pinstripes. Juan Soto never had loyalty to pinstripes. Anyone paying attention to Juan Soto and Scott Boras knows that. But fans, they get drawn in by the beauty, by the passion, by James Earl Jones. Those are voices and adjectives that are not used by Juan Soto and Scott Boras. So it sets up to an auction. This wasn't free agency. This was exactly what had been planned from day one. There was an auction. And it just so happens that only 4 years ago, a new bidder decided to put his credit card down and get a paddle. The new bidder was Steve Cohen. He raised his arm. He looked at his limited partners, the Wilpons, and said, I'll take the Mets. Over $2 billion, I'll take the Mets. We can't compete with the Yankees. I'll take the Mets. There's really no way that we could ever be anything other than the ugly stepchild. I'll take the Mets. And then Steve Cohen meets the media, meets you, the fans, and says, 3 to 5 years. That's what I'm asking. Give me 3 to 5 years and I will give you a World Series. Year 1, year 2, year 3. Mistakes, new owner-itis. This is a lot harder than I thought it was. Year 4, a fantastically miraculous run to the National League Championship Series. You are so close to the World Series, you can taste it. It's a step forward. The Bulls are ready to beat the Pistons. It's time. Then you enter into the offseason. You have a good number of free agents available, but there's only one who you want. There's one who you've put your mind on, and Steve Cohen is a patient man. Steve Cohen knew that he wanted David Stearns when David Stearns was driving to cops in Whitefish Bay. That's a custard place. If you know, you know. Steve Cohen waited and got his man. Steve Cohen made some mistakes with managers. Feels like he found the right one with Carlos Mendoza. Carlos Mendoza's son may have leaked the fact that Juan Soto was going to be a Met. But no, we didn't want to believe it because there's still 5 teams in it. We're hearing rumors from people in the media, sources, leaks. There's still 5 teams, maybe 4. Then recently, Yankees, Mets. It was choreographed. There's no greater conductor than Scott Boras when you've got 2 teams after a player and neither of them can lose. Steve Cohen is at the point in his ownership career 5 years in where he's got to take the next step because the ego of an owner, he wants to stand up next October and he wants his social media people to play the clip from the day he took over. He wants to be right. He wants to walk around New York City not as the number 2 team in New York, but his vision, the number 1 team in New York. The development that he wants to do around Citi Field, we can make fun of the chop shops all we want. His vision is that it becomes a park, a destination where people can lose their hard-earned money, casinos, or they can go spend time and engage with baseball or greenery or beauty, something you wouldn't associate with Queens. Think about for a minute Steve Cohen buying the Mets with his sole goal of making them a better franchise than the Yankees. You know very well because you've seen it before. The precursor, the playbook. It was started by another Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer paid an unbelievable price for the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers, the relationship to the Lakers, it's the same as the relationship of the Mets to the Yankees. What do? You call the agent and you say, we're going to win. It's a matter of when, not if. I understand that I'm dealing with the Dodgers. I understand I'm dealing with the Yankees. But I'm going to win. Men like Steve Cohen, when they see something they want, whether it's a piece of art at an auction or a player in free agency, they view it as the same. The irony is that art does not have to be a declining asset the way players are. It can be if you choose badly and have a bad eye. But if you don't, it can be an increasing asset. Players are not. Juan Soto in 10 years will not be worth nearly what Juan Soto is today. The 26-year-old Juan Soto is a Picasso. The 40-year-old Soto is a Samson. But it doesn't matter, because what Steve Cohen, next part of his plan, it doesn't end with Juan Soto. He continues to build around him. Why? Because Steve Cohen gets sat down by David Stearns. And David Stearns says, this is great. You didn't need me to negotiate this deal. All you did was hear Scott Boras lie to you or not lie to you. Maybe tell you the truth, maybe not tell you the truth. And you went over. But now it's my turn. Now you've got to let me surround Juan Soto with winning players. You have to help me build a pipeline. Let me spend the maximum internationally. Make sure I have the budget to do whatever I want all through the minor league system. Make sure that I have the money to go out and sign Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes, his Yankee teammate, gets 3 years, $38 million. An overpay? It doesn't even register. It's not even a 2 on the Richter scale. The reason it's not, they're going to make him a starter. If it works, great. If he goes AJ Puck, then he'll just be a reliever again. No problem. Bring me Frankie Montas. No problem. David Stearns is going to help the Mets around the edges while Steve Cohen helps them with right between the eyes. Because Juan Soto is not the last free agent the Mets are going to sign. Because if he is, then the Mets aren't going to win.